Good morning, everybody. Jeff from Rust Bucket Valley Garage. We are going to start pulling the body off of the frame. We should be getting a frame tomorrow or the next day, and we're held for parts on the rest of the stuff that we'd like to do, so we'd like to take and move this along. First thing we're going to do the easiest things first. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is there are 8 body bolts that look exactly like this. This one here is a rear. Okay, it's longer and stouter, and then these 2 are on the side. There's one more in the front, and we're going to go ahead and pull those off the right side first, and then before we take and put these back in, we're going to take and wire brush them a little bit on the grinder, and then we're going to head and put some anti-seize on there. This one here did not come out easy, so we laid on it with the impact wrench, and it finally gave it up and came out. So let's take a look here and see what it takes to get one of these out. So looking underneath the vehicle, you see this is the front. This bolt is still in. There is one that is right here that we've already taken out. There's one in front of the rear wheel and in back of the rear wheel, and we want to use a 3/4 inch socket. Our electric impacts won't hack these things, so use a 3/4 inch with the impact wrench, the air powered impact wrench, and just really lay on them, and we'll get these things out. And there it just comes right out. See, now this one here, it might have taken and broken the insert that is in the body. So because we went ahead and we spun this thing up with the impact wrench, and it just turns. So we might have to take the wheel off here because the wheel is like really tight, and we can't really get any tools in there like this to take and hold it. So we're going to have to take and extract this one here. So let's take a look at what that process looks like. So it turns out we just had to take the impact wrench and hold it at an angle a little bit while this was in there, and it bound the nut enough so we could take and get it out. This blue material on here is Loctite. Okay, they really don't want these bolts coming out. So we want to take, and since this body mount, when this thing was in here, was actually like this, it was off axis, it should actually be like this. We want to take and check these mounts, and we want to take and check the bolts and see if they're bent at all. This one here actually looks like it's in good shape, and as soon as we got the bolt out, the mount sprung back into position. So these are got a little rubber grommet on them, so as soon as we take the body off and then take and put it back on, these ought to straighten right back up. So let's go do the other side. So here we are on the left side of the car. This is the left front body bolt, and this one's got to come out. And the next one in the middle. Okay, we'll come back to that one. That one is a little bit stuck in there. Okay, this one's by the rear wheel. Eh. There we go. There we go. Okay. So just got to hold them on an angle a little bit so they can crimp that top nut in there. And before we put those back in, we may hit those with the welder. Okay. I don't know what the situation is there. It could be a nut inside a cage. So I don't know. I'm not familiar with the body retention system on the JK. So I know on the YJs that they're actually welded in. Okay, so let's go get the one way in the back. Okay, so this is the one that is all the way in the back of the car. That's where the tow hook is, back end of the car. So let's go ahead and get this puppy out. So this one, as you can see, is full of moisture, and we need to let our compressor take and catch up just a little bit, and we'll get this one out in a second. So our compressor's caught up. Let's give it another zip. And that comes right out. Okay, so this one right here is actually wet. So we're going to have to really take and put NECs on this one here, and we're going to have to blow out all the inserts in there to make sure that we haven't got any corrosion in there. Okay, normally the next thing we would do, since we have all the body bolts out, the next thing we would do is to lighten the weight with what you're dealing with, is we take the doors off. Okay, because the doors come right off on this. However, this morning we have had thunderstorms here in Los Angeles, and according to the sky, it looks like it may not be finished, so we're not going to do that right now. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to take and pull out the rear drive shaft, okay, because that'll make it a little bit easier to take and move things around, because when we take and put another chassis under here, it is easiest to move around if we have a rolling chassis. So the first thing that's going to take and come off are the, after we get the drive shaft out, is the front and rear axle assemblies with all the suspension. And then we're going to attach that on a new frame. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so we're under the car and we're pulling the drive shaft out. There are 8 5/16 bolts in each of these flanges. They do not have a slip yoke on either end. They have the slip is inside here, which is all enclosed and everything, keeps all the dirt and the rust and everything out of there. One thing before you take the drive shaft out, mark it for front and rear, okay, with a piece of chalk. I put a line-up line on here and on the flange, and on the flange on the third member. And also right here we have front, and there's a line-up mark here and here and on the flange. If you take all the bolts out, and you have to use a 5/16 1/4-inch drive ratchet to take and get those out, because that makes it easier. Kind of limited room. If you take and are under the car from the driver's side, you have a lot more room. The gas tank is right here. So it doesn't allow you much room. So we'll just take and apply a little bit of pry bar to this and get the shaft out, and it'll be just a second. Alright, so when you get ready to take drive shaft off, the end of the drive shaft sits in like a cup. You see this is rusty right around here. This sits up in this cup right here. A little bit of pry bar would not take and do it. However, we have a drift, looks like this, and there is a relief hole right here, and there's one on the other side right here, where if you put the rear end up on a jack, you can take and turn the third member, and you tap inside this hole here a little bit and inside this hole a little bit, and then finally this thing will come out. And it wasn't coming out, not being very cooperative at all. But before we take and put this back in, we're going to sand this just a little bit, and maybe we'll put a little bit of anti-seize on there, take and get that out. Okay, so we have the rear of the drive shaft out, so that's good. The next thing we want to take and do is to give us a little bit more clearance to take and work on this, the front joint, to take and get that, because we're going to have to take something like a chisel or something and drive it in here and just part that. It won't take much effort at all, but we want to take the skid plate off. Okay, so we'll use an 18mm on the impact, and we'll go ahead and zip those bolts off. And right here. And one last one. Oh, loud noises, by the way. So the transfer box and the transmission is supported by the cross member, so there's no danger of anything falling on you at this point. So, but there will in the future, so I will give you appropriate cautions at the time. So we are going to get something sharp and stick it in right here, and we are going to take the rest of the drive shaft out. But we do have it marked for front and rear, and our index marks are on there. And the reason we take and do that is because if the drive shaft happens to be balanced, it's balanced at the factory, so when they take and put the thing in, you'll get vibration if you get it off. Okay, so you want to take and put everything back the way it was, so that you have a better ride. The next thing we do after we take and get the rest of the drive shaft out of here, and we have all the bolts out of it and everything, so we just have to take and get that out of that little cup that is in the back here, because there's a little bit of rust in there, so it's holding in there fairly well, but we'll get that. The next thing that we're going to be doing is dropping the gas tank. Okay, by the fuel gauges on the dash, there's about a quarter tank of gas in there, so shouldn't be too heavy. But while we were taking all the bolts out of there, we're going to put a piece of plywood to support the bottom of the tank on a jack, and then we're going to take all the bolts out, and then we're going to lower it down low enough so that we can get all the hoses off of the fuel pump, and we can also undo the electrical, and then we can jack up the side of the car, which will be the passenger side, and we can take and pull the fuel tank out easily. Okay, and we'll put down a cloth on the ground, and like a big shop blanket or something, and we'll just take and pull that, and it'll come right out. We are underneath the car. We've taken a break just for a second. I want to show you something. All of the hoses and for vapor and fuel are this type of connector. So these things are kind of a pain in the butt. It has kind of a barbed bridge that goes across here, and to take and get that out, you must stick a small probe in these holes right here, one on one side, one on the other side, and gently pry on that up at the same time and get that all the way to the top, and then it will release the hose that is inside. So these things are just a pain in the butt. It's a bad design. I hate them. So that's what most of them on this gas tank are. So let me show you where we are now. So right above where we're working is this mechanism right here. This is a charcoal canister, collects all the vapors from the tank and takes and sends them up to the engine to be burned. We had to take and remove this, disconnect all of the hoses that were on there, and you can see, things like this. This right here is a little bit different kind of connector. There's a little lever right here, and you take that lever and you move it over to the position here, and then you wiggle it, and it'll allow the hose to take and come off. There's a couple of electrical connectors on here, some push-on connectors. So then we have another one of our little friends right here. So we went ahead and removed this to take and give ourselves a little bit more room underneath the work. So at this point here, you can pretty much see that the tank is dropped down and it's being supported by a jack. There is some fuel in here, a little bit more than I thought, it's a little bit heavy. This is a plastic gas tank, and it has a steel shroud around it, for impact resistance. Do not forget, up in the front here, there are some valves, like right up in this area here, that you must disconnect. Those are for fuel vapor, and also it seals the tank off if you roll over. So the thing that we're working on right now is the connector, which is right here for the fuel pump. Okay, it has I call it a safety leash on the connector, so they really do not want that to take and come off. On these kind of connectors here, you just squeeze these two ears together, and then you hear a pop, and then you can go ahead and you can take and pull this off. Okay, but we're working on getting these ears out right now, and this cable off. So what we'll do is on this side right here, we'll squeeze the two ears together with light pressure from a pair of pliers, while we take and go on this side here, and we just pry lightly on that keeper, and then we'll go ahead and just extract that connector off. Then we should pretty much be ready to take this tank out. We should have to move it forward just a little bit, and then because we have an interference bit right here, this is the fuel entrance port to the tank, and then there's another pollution mechanism up on top of there, and who knows what the heck all this stuff is. It's just a pain in the butt. We got to California here, we have to take and have so much of this extra stuff. It's just amazing. So anyway, we'll be back with you when we take and get that connector off. So as you can see, the gas tank has been removed out of here, and not one of the easiest things I've ever done. There was one more line, the line hanging down right under the frame rail, as you can see. It is right there. So we got a lot of work to do still, but the next thing we're going to do is take a look at the gas tank and show you what I had to go through to get that out. So here's the gas tank, and here's the gas pump right here. This is a fill valve right there. There were tubes in every single one of these things. There were wires in every single one of these things. Big bunch of wires there. And then we have the vent, which is right there. So we also found one thing that we didn't see, and that is right back here in this back corner. There's another 18mm bolt that we did not see. So we had to take in, when we dropped the tank down just a little bit, we had to take that out because we know something was being held on it. And also thing that we had to do is to clear the gas tank. We had to jack up the rear end a little bit, and we also had to take the lower right strut out because it was interfering. You can see right there just in front of the shock, there's one bolt. There's another bolt just ahead of where the block on the jack is. So we had to take and get those things out. So next thing we want to do, it's easy, is take the rear bumper off. And let's take a look at that. So underneath the rear bumper, there's these brackets here on both sides. We'll take those off of both sides, and we'll take all the loose hardware up. This is for the tow hook, or for the recovery hook. We'll take this out. There's still two bolts in the frame. There's a bolt right here, and also this has a hitch on it. So we're going to be taking that off of the frame as well. Lighten it up a little bit, and it'll be the same thing on the other side. Alright, so on the back bumper, there are 4 bolts in a bracket on this side. There are 4 bolts in a bracket on that side, and they look just like this. You go ahead and take those out, and then there's one bolt about right here, and one bolt about right here, and the bumper comes off, just like that, and in the pile. So next thing you got to do is trailer hitch. One thing I wanted to show you is if you have a vehicle that you're changing the frame on and you have a trailer hitch on there, somebody put the nuts on the outside and they welded them, which I don't really appreciate very much. They could have welded them on the inside, and I could have used an impact wrench on them. And it's made them very easy. Wouldn't have been that much effort. They didn't do that. But anyway, in taking this off, there are 4 bolts in here. Make sure that when you loosen up the 3rd bolt, you leave it in, because when you take out the 4th bolt, this is going to swing down, and if you're underneath it, it is going to hurt you very, very badly. It's going to swing right into your stomach. Okay, so we'll take and pull those bolts out since everything's loose now, and I'll let you see what it looks like when I get everything out. Okay, so here's all the bolts that we're going to hitch. Here is the hitch. We had a little bit of wiring on there. That is off of there. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to take and pull this recovery hook off here. The other frame may or may not come with one, but for rough situations, I would like them on both sides of the rear. So I'm going to be taking this this recovery hook off of this frame here, and I'll have an extra one if the other one comes with one, but I want it on the other side. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so we hit this with the impact wrench and low WW40, not a sponsor, and that came off. The other side over here is not drilled for recovery hooks, so we'll have to take and do something about that. but this one here is, so we can just take the pattern off of this one, transfer it over to the other side, and take and drill for our new hooks. The next thing that we are going to be doing in the morning, since I'm trying to make this one continuous video so you can see about how long it takes. So we have about 7 hours in it so far. So obviously the video won't be 7 hours long, but we're going to do the emergency brakes. We're going to take and disconnect them. And over here, you have to figure out how to get that off. And so we'll get on that. That's coming up next. So to remove the parking brake, you have to take and get into the center console. To make it a little bit easier, we've removed both the front seats and the center console. We just kind of laid it over on the side here. And this right here is a parking brake mechanism. And these are the two lines that goes back to the rear wheels. And there's kind of a clip that looks like this, that there is a single cable for this. This is like a highly round spring mechanism. Here's the parking cable right here, and you can see down in here that there is kind of a clip with 3 holes in it. The center hole has the cable for the actual parking brake, and then on either side you will see that there is another hole where these 2 pieces go into. So you need to take and release that, and you can do that with your fingers. Be careful of this thing right here, because it will fly back just a little bit, but it won't come apart, it'll just come back. So be careful of that. But once you take and get these released, let me show you what happens underneath. Pretty much what you want to do is, this is the brake mechanism from up on top. This right here, this area here, is through a hole on the axle, and then there's another hole with this piece right here through the axle. And let me show you what that looks like. Okay, on the axle, those 2 pieces sit. This is inboard of the wheel, right here and right here. And you want to take this one right here. They thought ahead a little bit, and there is actually a notch in the bottom here that when you take and squeeze the tines together, and that little clip here, it will come out the bottom, and this one will come out the bottom as well. And then you can take the S hook out of the parking brake that is in the back of the I want to say disc drum, but that's not really right. The backing plate for the brake assembly. Let me show you what those clips look like. And this one right here is the one that you take a pair of needle nose pliers, and this has points that are kind of expanded out a little bit, and you go ahead and you press those together, and then you pull this this whole cable assembly back. It'll come out of that hole, and there's a slot in there, and that will come down. And the same thing with this. You want to take and pull this back just a little bit, and the spring keeps everything tensioned. So if you pull on that, it will take and come out of the little detent that's in, because there's kind of a shoulder here. Okay. So after we went ahead and we got that out, it basically meant that the rear axle was ready to come out, because remember we talked about this earlier, that you want a rolling chassis to take and move around, so you can take and move it onto the body, after you get the old frame off. So we undid all the parts, or all the bolts that held the sway bars and all that to the body. Okay, and the springs just fell out, because once you take the bolts out of the sway bars and the connecting links and all that kind of stuff, the axle bed just pretty much comes out. We left the tires on, so it's a mobile unit. The only problem we had was these right here are the speed sensors, okay, that go into the rear wheel. We did not take a chance on breaking this little connector here, and this connector would not come apart. Okay, so basically what we did is we just took it out as an assembly. So we're going to clean these things up and reuse them, put them back in the back of the backing plate. Okay, so after we take and got the rear axle out, we moved it over onto, under the frame. So we have the axle from the JK in the new frame, and we have this kind of over our pit area, so we can take and work on stuff from the bottom. Okay, but the installation of this is complete, including the shock absorbers and the sway bar and the springs and all that. So we finished this quite late last night. We had to take and disconnect the brake lines. Brake lines are held on the outside of the frame, 10mm bolt. Okay, we're going to take and cap these, keep the dirt out of them. So we're in pretty good shape right now. So the next thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take and reposition the Jeep, so we can take and work on the front end of it. And we're also going to reposition this. We're going to move it back about 3 feet so we can take and get the front axle under it. So the next thing we're going to take and work on today is we're going to take and pull the front axle out of the JK, after we take and get cribbing underneath it. So we have a little bit of cribbing underneath here, but this is not Sketchy Garage. This is Ruckabucket Valley Garage. So we're not going to take and leave that in there. We want to take and move this back just a little bit to take and give us some more room in the front. So after we take and get the front axle out, then we're going to start lightening operations, where we're going to take the axle assembly, the tires, all this is suspension, the steering box, all that out, and we're going to take and put that in our new frame. Then, as I said, we're going to start our lightening operations. We're going to take the hood, the doors, the roof. The roof is quite heavy on this thing. It's a big fiberglass assembly, and we're going to get it ready to take and move that off of the frame, so we can take and get the engine, transmission, and gearbox pulled out of here. And to make it real easy for us, we're going to take and pull the body off first. But you'll have to watch the next couple of minutes and see how we take and pull the front axle out of this. So continuing on, we've moved the frame back as far as we can to take and give us some room to take and move the front end under the front of the frame, and to take and build the front suspension. We've also put some additional cribbing under here to hold the vehicle up. We've also moved it back about 3 feet. We have additional cribbing under here that'll allow us to take and work underneath it. We started a little bit of the lightning operation. The cowl panel's off, the left front fender is off, the windshield is ready to come out. It's just sitting in there. So that was after we had a real good time pulling the front axle out. We took and did a couple of things underneath, and let me show you what we did under there before I show you how the axle came out. So under the car here, you can see right here, this is the drive shaft for the front end. We also have the exhaust disconnected on this side, and on this side, since we were under here, we might as well go ahead and do that. We pulled the rest of the suspension out, the control arms left and right. The left one, this is the driver's side right here, did come out really easy. Okay, and this one came out really easy. This one right here we took out earlier because it was bent into a horseshoe, so there was an awful lot of damage on that one. However, this piece of suspension right here is supposed to be straight, and this is curved quite a bit. It's like a mild C. Okay, so we're going to have to take and wait until we get the engine out, because if you'll see right here, we can't get a wrench on this bolt because the bracket for the exhaust is 1/2 inch away. So we can't extract this bolt out and get this out. So we don't really need this out, okay, but we do need the bolt. Okay, so as soon as we take and pull the engine, transmission, and gearbox, then we will be doing that. We're also going to be changing the motor mounts. This is the left motor mount, and the right motor mount, you notice the right motor mount is off axes, and also you can see right here the frame is broke right here. So the engine is actually, it went back and then it came forward, and when it came forward it broke this bracket right here. Okay, so let me show you what the front axle looks like. So we have the front axle. We went ahead and pulled it out, and we didn't take and install it yet because if you're looking at it, this side right here is the passenger side. This is the side that sustained all the damage. You'll notice right here the paint has gone off of here, which shows that this tube here sustained some bending action, which made the paint flake off. So we have to actually done some measurements on this, and it is off axes by 102 thousandths. That is unacceptable. Everything does work in it. We can take and turn the yoke, and the axles do turn. They turn without any kind of rubbing sound or anything. However, we don't put junk back together like this, so we have actually ordered a new housing, and FedEx should be bringing it from New Jersey. So we really had to take a look around for one. There's a shortage of JK axles right now, so the people want an arm and a leg for them. So we just wanted a reasonable price for one, so we finally found one. Anyway, it's taken a couple of days to take and film up to this part right here, and I'm going to take and end this first installment, at this point, because we are on hold for parts right now until we get this new axle housing, and then we'll get this one straight and stripped down, and we'll take and show you how the new one goes back together. So we just want to take and let this project rest just a little bit, and we can take care of some of the other things. We got the rebuilt seat belt left in our box here a couple days ago. We went ahead and put that in, so now we have a good seatbelt system. So we're still looking for airbags. So anyway, we are going to continue with episode 2 after we can get the parts. So as soon as we get those parts in, we will continue. But I'm going to go ahead and upload this, and I don't want those videos to be too long. So hopefully I've given you a lot of real good information. So we're about a third of the way there in getting this this JK stripped down, so we can take and move the body. We can get rid of the old frame. So it's coming along. It's coming along well. Okay, hope I've given you some good information, and thanks for tuning in. Thank you for all the likes, and if you hit the notification button, you will know when we do something new. You will be the first one to know. So tune in for the next episode on this JK rebuild and then the build. And hope you have a good afternoon. Talk to you soon.